before I go on, before I reach to that point, what I want to do is to answer a question that Terence asked right at the beginning. Why has politicians been reluctant to change when it comes to political financing? Now that I have joined this group of untrustworthy people, and that you are looking at me with a pinch of salt, boleh percaya lagi ke tidak ada ni. Let me tell you why. I think one of the main reasons is because, as Terence rightly pointed out, election is so expensive when running, not just an election, just being in a political party is really expensive. It is expensive enough if you win. It is even more expensive if you lose, like me. Because someone like me, I contested in Pendang and I lost. But the expectation is, you still need to service the constituency despite losing. And the reality is, in the rural areas, I think it is more expensive than urban areas. Because in urban areas, people don't really expect much. But in rural areas, people come to politicians for help. This is not corruption. And I'm telling you now that, regardless of the discussion that we have today, and regardless of whatever things I have said in the past, I fully intend to raise more money from businesses, from companies, from donation, from whatever that I can find, from sources I can find, in order to help people in the constituency. One of the, it is an even bigger problem for me because I contested in Pendang, in Kedah, and lost. And then last week a decision was made at the party level that I have to move to Perlis. So I'm now Naib Ketua Bahagian Bersatu in Arau and still serve Rombongan Bersatu Negeri Perlis. Suddenly I have two constituencies to look after, so I need more money from you. But the reality is, if you were to come with me during the campaign trail, you will see things that you have not seen before. I visited a family. The husband has a mental problem, so he, runs around, basically attacking the wife, smashing plates, banging on the wall and all this. And for the last 7-8 years, because of the condition that he is in, the family built. It's not easy to explain things like this, but the family built a cage for him. For the last 7-8 years, he lives in a cage, maybe the size of this half of the table in front of you here. So from here to there, all the way to the back. Kat belakang ada katil. Sebelah sini meja makan, sebelah situ toilet, sini ada the wire pagar tu yang segi empat tu. So that's like how he sees the world outside. But he's been in that cage for almost 8 years. Why? Because the wife does not have enough money to bring the husband for medical treatment. I also saw another lady. If you think that I'm lying, come with me. Kampung Bukit Teguh in Pendang. I also saw another family the wife went for an operation and came home. The house is not very hygienic. The scar became infected, and the scar is like this big. It's an open wound, and the husband doesn't have enough money to bring the wife to hospital. I saw another grandmother, must be in her 80s, whose house is in the floodplain, so it easily gets flooded. So the dapur is on the ground level, but the living area is upstairs. But she's almost 80, she can't walk properly. She has to crawl up the stairs every day, up and down the stairs, in order to get help, in order to get things from the kitchen, go upstairs and so on. Rumah kampung, right? The dapur kat bawah and then living room kat atas. And when I saw her, she was crying in front of me, saying, Cik Wan jadi calon saya dapat bantuan RM200 sebulan daripada jawatan kebajikan, tolonglah naikkan jadi RM300 a month. That was the begging of a grandmother, and that was what she said, RM300. And here we are in Kuala Lumpur. But you know, RM300 is one lunch for some people. She is asking for RM300 for a month. You know, and things like this really change your perception. And this is why, despite the debates that we've been having about money in politics and so on, I made a pledge to myself that I will raise money, that I will go around asking for money in order to help these people. You know, I have moved to Arau in Perlis, but I'm still continuing support in Pendang, because you know, the campaign experience really changed my perspective on how to view a situation. And this is why politics is so expensive, because the support needs to be given continuously. It's not just during the campaign season. During the 11 days of campaigning, I think I submitted my financial report to the EC on the last day, on the deadline. I can't remember what deadline was, because I was meticulously going through the list. I think it came to about RM189,000 during the 11 days. Itu during the 11 days period. You know, and the reason is quite straightforward. I did a quick calculation here. You can see the published account. I'm not even sure if the EC publishes our financial reports. They don't? Oh, then I should put it up on my Facebook page or website for people to see. I see, okay. But I thought once submitted, then they will publish it. But you know, this is an indication. I must admit, I've been in Ministry of Education since you know, the minister was sworn in, and I have completely forgotten about all the money. But just to give you an indication of why it is expensive during campaign time, flags. You know, please, you know, the next campaign agenda for civil society really should for us to just ban flags. You know, it's such a waste of money. But to give you an indication, one flag yang 5 foot times 2.5, just a medium-sized flag, yeah, is RM4 each. The buluh that you use to the pole that you use is RM1 each. And I bought I think 10,000 or 12,000 flags. It's really necessary, because if you don't have flags, then you know, your supporters will feel, where is my party, the party that I support? So it's not really about showing, it's not really a campaign material, it's about motivating your own supporters to come up. The constituency I ran in, I had like 78,000 voters, but I think I bought 10,000 flags or so, maybe a little bit more, I can't remember the exact number. But say RM5 in total, 4 plus 1, RM4 plus RM1, 10,000, that's RM50,000. Then, you know, another thing, the big item is t-shirts. You know, until today, 2 months after the election, people still come to me and Cik Wan, dulu dah menang tak bagi saya t-shirt. And we think it's a small matter, but t-shirt is RM10 each. Katalah I bought 5,000. 5,000 for 78,000 voters is really nothing. You know, but 5,000 is already 50,000. That's 100,000 just spent like that. Was that? To the law?
You might be breaking the law, what do you say?
No, I'm not. Because the reality is, these are things that you buy. Right? The limit is 200,000 still. Then rental. You know, you go into a constituency where you don't have a house. So I don't have a house in Pendang, and you need to provide accommodation for your whole team. And this is a time when people really charge money for rent, right? So I had to, I think it's 4 or 5 houses, let's say 5 lah. It's 3,000 ringgit per house. 5 because 1 for storage, ni buluh-buluh ni nak letak kat mana, bendera semua kan, dengan t-shirt lagi. That's 1 whole house already. Then you need to have a house, maybe 2 houses for the team that goes with you. You know, people who look after security, and then people who, you know, once you buy the flags, you need to sew the flags so that you put it on the poles, right? It doesn't come with a pole. So you need to actually put it into the pole and then you carry it everywhere. So you need like 20, 25, 30 people just to be with you all the time to help the campaign machinery. So 5 houses, 3,000 each, 15,000. Car rental. An area like Pendang, you drive your Proton Saga, I have an Iris and a CRV. If I were to drive any of them, an Iris tu memang tak boleh pergi ke mana lah jawabnya. If I were to take my CRV, I think it will have the same problem. The only solution is Toyota Hilux or any other four-wheel drive, right? Because CRV mana ada tempat nak letak buluh dengan bendera. So Hilux, I think the rental was about 3,000 ringgit each for a period of 3.5 weeks. So I think if I remember correctly, I had two. You can now see, even though it's a big amount of money, I can't even remember how much, the things that we paid for. So which is why the finance report is really important to refer to. In total, ini baru 4 things: flags, t-shirts, house rent, car rental, 121,000 ringgit. That is not yet considering the fact that when you contest in an area where the source of income from rice, padi, or from getah, rubber tapping, you need to appreciate that you're pulling them out from their daily work that they do. Getah scrap, do you know how much a getah scrap sells for? 1 ringgit and 80 cents per kilogram. 100 kilogram, 180 ringgit. 100 kilogram, 180 ringgit. And to get 100 kilogram, you need to work for like a week. That is the level of job. If they're lucky, kalau hujan, tak ada income. So if you pull them out in order to, pacak the bendera for you and all that, what you need to do is, you need to appreciate that they are taking time off work. And you need to compensate a little bit. You need to buy food for them, you need to buy drinks, you need to provide accommodation, you need to appreciate that they're helping you. All this costs money. So this is why it is so expensive to run a campaign. And even now, after losing, I still need to have people running the show over there in the constituency, because I'm here fulfilling your invitation to speak. So my invoice will come later on. Yeah. So all these are realities that we, including myself, when I was in civil society, I didn't realize. Which is why when we work on the ground, doing the actual political work, I think the hardest part is to balance between idealism and reality. And this is a topic I tried to tackle in my presentation in UMCDEL on Wednesday, which I'm happy to share the speech with you later on. So one is because it is simply expensive. Number two is because the reason why politicians are reluctant to change is because it is vindictive as well, or it has been very vindictive. When I joined party politics, I had to resign from all the posts that I had at that time. So I was in Ideas, many of you know. I resigned on 28th of February was my last day employed at Ideas. And the reason why I resigned was, my fear is, had I stayed in Ideas, Ideas would be victimized. Because the politics is so vindictive. And you can see that even within Ideas, despite the fact that it was an organization that I built for almost 8 years that I worked there, Ideas itself had to distance themselves from me as soon as I left. And all this is really understandable, but it's also painful to see. Because you suddenly realize that you have worked for the last 8 years, and suddenly, oh no, they're saying, oh, that's your choice. We have nothing to do with you. But that's the reality of Malaysian politics. You take a big risk by joining a non-mainstream party, especially on the opposition side, on Pakatan Harapan at that time. And the vindictiveness of UMNO and Barisan Nasional that has been perpetuated for so long, and especially under Najib, This vindictiveness of UMNO Barisan Nasional made the recipient, people like me, and the donors really cautious about disclosing who is funding your political work. I think some of you on this panel were my donors. Some of you in this room were my donors as well. But many of my donors just simply put money into my bank account. I disclose the amount, but I have no idea where they're from. And you'll be so amazed. Some of donations are like for 10 ringgit, 5 ringgit, 20 ringgit here and there. Some are much bigger, 5, 10, 15,000 ringgit. But people from everywhere really wanted to help. But they did it anonymously. And if I were to disclose the donors, they might stop funding. And there are legitimate reasons. One is the vindictiveness is one, but there are also people who simply, do not want to be credited. They're doing it sincerely. They do not want to be known as a donor. So kudos to them as well. Some of them are a bit worried that more people will be asking for donation, if the public knows. But that's the reality. The vindictiveness, the vindictive culture perpetuated by UMNO and implemented with brutality by the Najib regime made people fearful of disclosure. Then comes the issue of dependency. I mentioned just now that people come to politicians for help, and this is the handouts and the giveaway culture perpetuated by UMNO Barisan Nasional resulted in people coming to politicians for various types of help, including financial help. But there is also a fourth factor, I think, why politicians are reluctant to change. And this is relevant to all of us here. And that is because I think civil society, myself included when I was in civil society, we fail to change society. We keep organizing events like this in Bukit Kiara. We have never thought about taking this event, a discussion like this, to Pendang or to Arau, to any of the rural areas. What's that? Or Kerinci for that matter. For us to keep talking among ourselves, we are just, this is a joke. The reality is we are already convinced about the need to change. Your challenge now as members of civil society, and my challenge now as someone who is involved in active politics, is to take this agenda into grassroots level so that people do not come to politicians anymore for help. We need to make sure that civil society is already doing the job so that there is no pressure for politicians to fund charitable work, so that politicians can do their actual work, which is legislation. But the more we keep talking among ourselves, and the more we are happy just simply by organizing an event in Bukit Kiara and not in Pendang, not in Arau, not in Padang Besar, not in Kerinci, we will be continuously talking to ourselves and nobody will understand us. We put pressure on the government, we go to the media, but we have a little bit of advantage because we are savvy with the media. People on the grassroots level, they don't have access to media the way we have. But I'm still using the word we here, the way you have. The we is okay. The access to the media means that we are so loud, we put pressure on government. But this is a failure to appreciate how people in politics needs to balance between demand from civil society and demand from voters. If I don't do things expected by my voters, people in my constituency, I fulfill the demands put by civil society, including myself before, I will never win in the next election because civil society has failed to change society. Civil society is happy talking among ourselves. The 70 organizations, how many of them are operational in Pendang? How many of the 70 organizations? So vocal in the media, and among the 70 is myself as well. So until I joined politics, I have never done an event like this in the constituency that I contested in. So this is a problem that we have. We keep talking about what needs to be done by the government, but we are not touching on the reality on the ground. It's great to be idealistic, but once you deal with reality, we will quickly grow up. And that was a challenge that I had to do within like 2 months of of joining politics and preparing to contest. Immediately I thought, oh my God, there's a much bigger world than the Bangsa bubble. And this is the reality that we have to face. So, what do we need to do to move forward? I think the push really needs to happen. Of course, keep Pakatan Harapan on track, make sure that the pressure remains. But we must, in members of civil society, we must realize there's an element of hypocrisy among ourselves as well. We are only brave enough to lobby people in Putrajaya. Not many people are brave enough to lobby people in Pendang. Not many people are brave enough to lobby people in Arau. Come with me to Perlis and see the challenge that you will face to change a culture like this. It's a 60 years of problem that we expect to be resolved in 2 or 3 months. In 5 years, even 5 years is such a short period to resolve problems created by in the last 60 years. So we need to be realistic in this. If we are really committed to reform, come help us educate the public out there so that in the coming election, they will say, politicians who pay my electricity bill, I will not vote for you. If you cannot change that pakcik-makcik in kampung, then you have failed as well. How is it fair for you to expect me to do it when you say my financial resources should be restricted? I'm helping to spread the message that we have been talking about for the last 8 years to members of the public. But suddenly, I have no financial resources anymore to do that. I might as well go back and work in Singapore. So that's the reality that we need to balance. The challenge for members of civil society is not to organize an event like this anymore. It's for you to go to the various rural places and change society with us. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen because we as politicians need to respond to voters' demands. And as much as we continue to fail to educate the voters, this will not happen. So Bangsa bubble is not enough. That's point number 1. Number 2, of course, you need to make Pakatan Harapan continue to be committed to manifesto. I will stop soon. I want to tell you a little bit about the Buku Harapan, the story behind Buku Harapan. I mentioned just now about how there's a lack of data when I was writing it. Demands, memorandas, and various different consultation. There was numerous number of demands that we had to consider. But my job was to compile a book that can be read easily. So something that we can say 60 janji, 5 teras, 10 janji 100 hari. Something that can be memorized easily and used easily by people campaigning on the ground. But one thing that was severely restricting my work is again the UMNO victimization culture, because we didn't have access to data. We had to make a choice whether we want to be aspirational or cautious, and we made a conscious decision that we must be aspirational. And being aspirational means, despite the insufficient data, bukan tak ada langsung, tapi insufficient data, we had to take the risk of saying certain things must be done. I think none of us realize that you can actually say the country, conclusively that the country are almost R1 trillion in debt until we got into government. Suddenly we got into government and we realized, the problem is much bigger than what UMNO was disclosing to the public. So there are certain things that are easier to be done now. There are certain things that must wait a little bit. This is only what, the 2nd month? We have another 4 years and 10 months. But the voter seems to, 9 hari bulan election, 10 hari bulan declare menang, 8 hari bulan hari tu dia nak semua problem dah selesai. And this is not realistic. So the time needs to be given, and one of the things we must ensure is that when we come to the next election, the opposition must have data. There is something called the Douglas Holmes rule. Alexander Douglas Holmes was Prime Minister of the United Kingdom 1963, 1964. And there's this rule that he introduced at that time where opposition members, senior opposition members, really need to have access to senior government officials so that they have data. Now, when I compiled the document to produce Buku Harapan, there was some information missing from the things I can access. And this needs to be fixed so that when the opposition, when Barisan Nasional and Gagasan Sejahtera, sorry, Barisan Nasional and Gagasan Sejahtera write their manifesto, they should not face a problem that I faced. It's not that it is not that we just produce this willy-nilly with no real backup. There were information given, information from people like Terence, Cynthia, and many others in the room. We did have some future, but government data was not given to us. So if we had to say some of the promises we put in this Buku Harapan are not deliverable, I don't think it is our fault. There's a legacy issue that we need to deal with. And the actual fault lies with UMNO's victimization culture. This needs to be clear. When Tun says this is not a Bible, for example, he is right. This is not a Bible. It guides us in what we want to do. Of course, as a person compiling it, I would love to see 100% of document implemented. But now being in government, I realize there's so much information that I didn't have when I was writing it. So it cannot be, the be-all and all. There will be restrictions, there will be limitations. But I would deny categorically that the problem is with us when we were writing it. It's not that. Our aspiration is to make sure the country goes back to the right track. We were not given the information that we were supposed to be given. And our job now is to make sure that our democracy grows further by making sure there's transparency, accountability, and political financing. And the democratic culture overall must be fixed as well, so that we respect opposition the way they need to be respected. I think one last point is about what Chin Huat said just now about discrimination. Now, again, what we need to understand is this is the balancing act between reality and idealism. I do not want to discriminate either, but if my opponent in Pendang were to be given, the full amount that is given to Pakatan Harapan MPs, if they were given that money now, what would happen is my own party workers, my own voters, my own party leaders would say, we work so hard for Pakatan Harapan and you are rewarding the opponent. That is something that many of us don't even consider when we talk about what is the ideal situation. The reality is we have 5 years. Let's work together to change the culture so that people at the grassroots level will say, we lost. Why are you giving the money to us? We lost. The money should go to the guy who win. But that cultural shift needs some time to come into effect. If we insist for that now, then none of the idealism will be reachable at all. So it's a matter of balancing between what is ideal and what is realistic. If we, if we make perfection the enemy of the good, then none of the idealism will come into reality. So we need to prioritize. We need to make sure the cleanup happens first, and then come into place situations like things like making sure that there is a level playing field. I think I'm being a little bit more realistic. You can see the idealism has dropped a little bit, because suddenly I have to deal with real life. Thank you very much.